In the heart of the Roman Empire, nestled along the fertile plains of Campania, Pompeii thrived as a beacon of Roman prosperity, culture, and indulgence. Its streets echoed with the sounds of merchants haggling, the clatter of horse-drawn carts, and the laughter of children chasing each other through narrow alleyways. Here, luxury and labor coexisted. Wealthy citizens adorned their villas with intricate frescoes and mosaics, while slaves and artisans toiled in workshops and bakeries. But while the people of Pompeii celebrated the abundance granted by their fertile soil and advantageous location, they lived under the silent shadow of Mount Vesuvius, a shadow they misunderstood. For centuries, the volcano had slumbered, its peaks viewed more as a picturesque backdrop than a deadly threat. And it was this false sense of security that would prove catastrophic on that fateful day in 79 AD, when the very land that nourished them erupted with apocalyptic fury, transforming Pompeii into one of history's most chilling and fascinating time capsules. To grasp the tragedy of Pompeii, we must first immerse ourselves in its daily rhythm, for it was no ordinary provincial town, it was a living microcosm of Roman society. Historian Mary Beard, in her acclaimed work Pompeii, The Life of a Roman Town, describes it as a city caught between ordinary existence and extraordinary preservation. Beard emphasizes how Pompeii offers us rare insights into not just monumental Roman achievements, but the small, often overlooked details of life: graffiti scratched onto walls, bread still in the ovens, and private shrines in humble homes. Archaeologist Paul Zanker echoes this sentiment in Pompeii, Public and Private Life, noting how the art, architecture, and urban layout of the city revealed the cultural ambitions of its people, who imitated Rome while maintaining their own provincial flair. These scholars remind us that Pompeii's significance lies not only in its destruction, but in how vividly it reflects the heartbeat of Roman civilization. The city itself was a marvel of Roman ingenuity and luxury. Streets paved with large volcanic stones allowed for drainage during storms, while stepping stones provided pedestrians with dry passage. Public baths served as social hubs where men and women discussed politics, struck business deals, and indulged in leisure. Taverns and bakeries lined the streets, and the amphitheater hosted gladiatorial games that enthralled the masses. Wealthy patricians built sprawling villas adorned with frescoes depicting mythological scenes and erotic imagery, showcasing both their taste and their openness to themes modern society might find provocative. The House of the Faun, one of the city's grandest residences, contained the famous Alexander mosaic, vivid depiction of Alexander the Great's victory at Issus, a piece of art so masterful that it still captivates historians and artists today. These details illuminate Pompeii not as a frozen ruin, but as a living, breathing city, vibrant with culture, commerce, and contradictions. And yet, while life bustled below, Mount Vesuvius loomed above a sleeping giant whose true nature was forgotten. Ancient writers had little knowledge of volcanic science. To them, mountains were gifts of the gods, their soil producing vineyards that yielded some of the finest wines of Italy. It was this complacency that made the eruption of 79 AD so devastating. The most vivid account of the disaster comes from Pliny the Younger, whose letters to the historian Tacitus remain one of the most invaluable eyewitness testimonies in antiquity. Writing about his uncle, Pliny the Elder, the great naturalist and author of Naturalis Historia, Pliny the Younger recounts how his uncle sailed across the Bay of Naples in an attempt to observe the eruption and rescue those trapped. He described the eruption's cloud as a pine tree, for it rose to a great height on a sort of trunk, and then it split off into branches. His words immortalize the terror of that day. As darkness fell over the city, ash rained from the sky, and the air grew thick with poisonous gases. The eruption unfolded in stages, each more terrifying than the last. The initial phase saw pumice stones and ash fall relentlessly, collapsing roofs and suffocating those who sought shelter indoors. For many Pompeians, escape was possible in the early hours, but hesitation, disbelief, and the sheer chaos of the situation led countless others to stay. Then came the pyroclastic surges, blistering avalanches of gas, ash, and molten rock that swept down the slopes of Vesuvius at unimaginable speeds. Entire families were engulfed instantly, their final moments preserved in haunting detail. Archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli, who pioneered systematic excavation in the 19th century, developed the plaster casting technique that allowed researchers to capture the forms of the victims as they had fallen: parents clutching children, lovers embracing, individuals shielding their faces. These casts became some of the most haunting archaeological artifacts ever discovered, confronting us with the raw humanity behind the catastrophe. What makes Pompeii extraordinary is not just the scale of its destruction, but the way that destruction preserved a complete snapshot of Roman life. Unlike most archaeological sites, where centuries of erosion and rebuilding obscure the past, Pompeii was sealed in a single catastrophic moment. Bread loaves carbonized in ovens remain intact, frozen mid-bake. Graffiti on walls reveals the wit, humor, and political concerns of ordinary citizens, with slogans like "I wonder," "A wall," "That you have not collapsed." So many writers' silly scribblings do you bear, amphorae still contained remnants of olive oil and garum, the fermented fish sauce beloved by Romans. The House of the Veti displayed frescoes celebrating Bacchus, god of wine, while brothels bore explicit paintings illustrating the services offered. Every discovery confirmed what Pliny the Elder once wrote in his Naturalis Historia: "In wine, there is truth, for Pompeii's ruins revealed Rome not as an idealized civilization, but as it truly was: indulgent, flawed, yet undeniably human." Modern historians see Pompeii as more than ruins, it is a cultural mirror. Historian Eric Moorman, in Pompeii's Living Statues, describes how the art and statuary in the city reflected not just Roman values, but also a complex interplay of identity, power, and aspiration. And yet, it is the tragedy itself that resonates most powerfully. Philosopher Seneca, writing long before the eruption, warned in his Natural Questions about the unpredictability of nature's wrath. What is more foolish than to wonder that man should perish? When we see lightning fall upon temples, ruins strike the loftiest towers, and the sea swallow entire cities. His words, though not about Pompeii, foreshadow the very lesson the city would embody. Pompeii is not only about loss, but about the fragility of human achievement in the face of forces far beyond our control. The rediscovery of Pompeii in 1748 by Spanish engineer Roquelac and d'Alcubierre reawakened the ancient city, and since then, excavations have fascinated scholars and tourists alike. Johann Joachim Winckelmann, often called the father of modern archaeology, was among the first to recognize its significance, writing in Reflections on the imitation of Greek works in painting and sculpture that the ruins of Pompeii offered a direct glimpse into the soul of antiquity. The site influenced not only scholarship, but art, architecture, and even fashion throughout Europe. Neoclassical architecture, inspired by the ruins, flourished across the continent, and Pompeii became synonymous with the rediscovery of Rome's grandeur. Today, millions of visitors walk its preserved streets, feeling the eerie sensation of stepping into a world where time stopped almost 2 millennia ago. Yet, Pompeii is more than a tourist attraction. It is a moral lesson. Historian Jared Diamond, in Collapse: How Societies Choose to Fail or Succeed, reflects on Pompeii as a stark reminder of environmental vulnerability. While Pompeii's destruction was sudden, Diamond argues that it parallels modern crises in which societies ignore looming threats until it is too late. In the complacency of Pompeii's citizens who enjoyed the fertility of volcanic soil without preparing for its dangers, he sees echoes of modern humanity's relationship with natural disasters and climate change. The story of Pompeii is thus both ancient and modern, an allegory that transcends time. In the end, what makes Pompeii unforgettable is not only the archaeological treasures or the chilling casts of its victims, but the profound human connection it forges across centuries. It reminds us of Pliny the Elder's final, perhaps fatal pursuit of knowledge, a man who died seeking to understand the natural world. It echoes Seneca's philosophical musings on fate and fragility. It affirms Mary Beard's insight that history lies not only in grand narratives, but in the mundane and the intimate. Pompeii forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. What traces of our own world will survive 2,000 years from now? If catastrophe struck tomorrow, what stories would our ruins tell? Pompeii is both a monument and a warning, a place where life and death are preserved side by side, teaching us that civilizations rise and fall not only by conquest, but by the whims of the earth itself. As visitors walk its silent streets today, they retrace the footsteps of those who once believed their city would endure forever. In that silence lies the echo of Pliny the Younger's words, haunting, eternal. How much easier is it for mortals to fear the gods than to understand them?